What's up, everybody? Welcome to the first episode of Moving Goalposts. I'm Billy Liucci.
And I am Amanda Atwell.
And I guess, Amanda, the way we start this is, how did we get here?
Yeah, how did we get here? I don't remember whose brainchild this was. I feel like it was mainly mine, just because we have a lot of conversations that people obviously see on the internet, but we also have conversations outside of the internet that probably go a little bit more in depth. And I think my idea was, for so many years, for the past 10, 12 years, Longhorns and Aggies have just been barking at each other online, and there's been really no point to it. But now there's a point to it. We actually can bark at each other, and there's a reason for it. So I figured something like this, there's not really a place out or something like this on the internet yet. So either you love it or you hate it. You probably love one of us, you probably hate one of us, but you know what? You're here either way, you're listening either way. So here we are.
And we're each going to win you over, or we're not. Probably depends on how each of our teams are doing, but we plan to do this throughout the fall. And like you said, this was a thing where we bark at each other and try to fact check. And it's, unfortunately, since the start of fall, it's been one-sided, and we're going to go into that in a little bit. But we've been doing that. And like you said, talking SEC, Big 12 back prior to that. I mean, for a long time, talking football, and said, you know what? We're keeping score on the field now, like you said. And let's start keeping score in a weekly podcast kind of for everyone. And we're going to also talk plenty of SEC, especially as the season gets going. We've been planning this for a while now. We've got a nice guest list for everybody. It's going to be some maroon, some burnt orange, but really a lot of people outside, just to get kind of that outside opinion on not just where the rivalry's at, but both teams. I mean, the actual rivalry when these two teams play each other isn't as much. It's way more about the two team seasons and trajectories, most notably in football, but as we've seen this year in everything. I just think it should be fun. It'll be a fun exercise, sometimes more fun than others for one of us. But
aren't you glad you didn't start this last year? Because I feel like that would have been a little bit rough for you.
Yeah, and we're definitely going to tackle that in a minute. And that's kind of where we came up with the name, right? You and I probably took how long you were on me about we need to land on a name. I
think it took maybe 2 months of me reminding you that we need to pick a name if we're ever going to get this off the road. And I really like the concept of the name because you know what? That's what you've done a lot for the past couple years, is that goalpost just keeps on moving. And I'm sure, everybody's guilty of that from time to time, but I think Billy Liucci might just be the king of it.
Find my crown, guilty as charged, but that was also, it was kind of funny because if I had a nickel for every time you or anyone else, but particularly you, have accused me of moving goalposts, I'd be very wealthy as we sit here today. But I also thought it's perfect for both fan bases. I mean, if you think about it, like even in the past week or 2 weeks, Texas with a softball national title, A&M gets one in just before the final gun sounds in track and field this weekend. And it's like, A&M there was a lot of boasting about softball going into the postseason.
Yeah. Which non-rep sport do we care about more?
Yeah, and it's always, and it's just always like, well, you tied the track national title. It wasn't solo. Or, well, we don't care about softball as much as we do the big. Oh, yes, we do actually. So we're constantly both sides moving goalposts. I think it's a perfect example. And you've been 1 year in the SEC. And I think this is one of the things I'd always said to Texas and OU fans prior to them coming in the SEC, along with some other stuff that we're going to visit in a minute. But this is the league of moving goalposts. If there's one thing you guys have seen in even 1 year, particularly with the schedule talk, all the SEC fan bases do is move goalposts. So this will be apropos, I think, every week throughout this season and any season. So I'm excited to get to it. I know you and I have been looking forward to doing this for a while and having our banter. Like you said, love it, hate it, enjoy it. I think a lot of people have fun. They'll realize that we have a lot of fun, but we also take it seriously. We take it just as seriously as anyone else around this conference. So I guess let's dive in. and started out.
Yeah, I think also I wanted to start off with, because since this is hosted on Tex Ags, to start off, I should probably actually let Tex Ags followers know who I am and know why I am somewhat qualified to talk about this. So I have a background as a sports anchor. I was a sports anchor on every corner of the state of Texas that you can think of, actually, for 5 years. I spent 2.5 years in the beautiful Amarillo, Texas, covering Texas Tech athletics. And my fun fact about covering Texas Tech athletics is I was there for 3 football seasons, and they did not win a single home game against a conference opponent other than Kansas the entire time I was there.
Wow.
I was almost exiled from the press box because they thought I was a bad luck charm. And you know what? I don't really have a problem with that.
It's interesting you say that. Keep going. Remind me to come back to that.
Okay. After that, I moved all the way from Amarillo to McAllen, Texas. If you've ever made that drive, you know how awful it is. If you're thinking about making that drive, do not do it. I was in McAllen for 2 years until the pandemic hit, and the pandemic kind of shook up sports a little bit. So I stepped aside from the industry, but I'm still kind of back in the industry. I work at WFA in Dallas now. I'm just in a community type role where I work with nonprofits on behalf of the TV station. So this is just my fun now, but I miss it, and I'm happy to be back yapping about sports. It's my favorite pastime.
Fun, and the fun is brought to us by our good friends at La Casa Tequila. And moving forward, Amanda, I know you've got some ideas. I've got to get you your bottles, and we're going to go.
The first, speaking, this is a true good review, is Billy gave me a bottle of La Casa, and I think it was deleted in the course of like 2 weeks.
Perfect.
Week and a half, maybe. I don't know. I told you we ran out of it, and you're like, well, you were supposed to have that for the
We needed it for the show.
It's gone now. It was very good. So yeah, once I get a few more, I have a Longhorn themed drink as well as a Aggie themed drink. I'm going to give it for both fan bases, and I honestly think I might like the Aggie one more with the recipe I've thought of. So
well,
that might be a little controversial, but I will have two options for you.
You're going to have to give me the recipe for the Aggie one, and what we'll do is we'll probably add some kind of segment where it's like, do you take a sip of the tequila or not? Kind of like, if this is a true statement, if you agree, you have to have a sip of the drink, and we'll have that here. I know we've got the Blanco for you, the Reposado, the Añejo. I've had all of them. They're terrific.
Reposado. I think I had the Blanco first time around, which the times I've been to Mexico, Reposado's grown on me, so I'm excited for that one.
Yeah, so it should be fun. My good friend Drake Screws and the crew over there. I've actually known Drake, going on so long, since dating back to his college days, and it was just kind of coincidental that they were a Tex Ag sponsor. And I had no idea it was even Drake until we kind of went through the process. And I said, wait a second, what name did you say? So we've been able to catch up through it. Great guy, great product. I'm enjoying it. And I got it handy at the house and ready for football season when everybody comes. Or for these podcasts, which I may have 2 per show if I don't get cooperation on the A&M side, Atwell. So, yeah. And you said you were bad luck. You said you were bad luck for Tech. I'm assuming, was that Cliff / Tuberville, or was that Cliff / Wells?
It was Cliff, and then I was also there when they fired Cliff and hired Matt Wells. Mm-hmm. And I was at the press conference for when they hired Matt Wells, and I have to say, the second I was in that press conference, I said, this is not going to last long. There was no hype. I was like, this was the least inspiring new coach press conference I've ever been to. So, I mean, couldn't happen to a better fan base. Sorry, Tech.
Well, and you guys got them this past weekend, didn't you? On the diamond.
Yeah. Not too mad about that.
I want to talk. Probably next week would be a good. We'll do it every 2 weeks until fall camp starts, and then we're going to be weekly on this. I do want to visit. Probably not today, but in the next episode, spend some time talking about NIL, Tech, obviously a part of that conversation. Both of our schools, very prominent and prevalent there. And kind of talk about that and just our feelings on where that's headed. You've had the House settlement and all that. We'll let all that settle in. And then in a couple weeks kind of talk, because it's been really fascinating, particularly with Tech and softball. And, Joey McGuire trying to pull them out of that. What's been a pretty long rut, going back. So that's all fascinating.
One of my favorite tweets from you was actually from the last time we played Tech. You were saying that you thought Tech was going to run over Texas in Austin, and then I think the score of that game was 57-7. I think that was around. I could be off by a couple points, but it was around a 50-point deficit. So
it was one of my worst. Sometimes the predictions.
Up there.
Yeah, and Amanda, as you know, sometimes the predictions. I think you know me well enough to maybe kind of sit back and be like, "Oh, he really believes this one," versus, "Okay, he's trying to get everyone right." Yeah, and he's just trying to get everyone riled up. That was one.
Was that an engagement farm tweet?
Yeah, it was rooted more in hope than it was what I truly believe. So you could call it engagement, but there was some hope behind it, because let's not forget the reason for the tweet is you guys did go down to Joey McGuire, and here's the thing. I was talking about the bad luck that you are in Lubbock. You also experienced that as a student in Austin. So maybe there is something to that in terms of you were there during the Strong/Herman era that I wish we were still in.
Yeah. The last time I was in Lubbock, when we played, we won. So maybe if I had gone to that game where then we would have won. So, but I don't know. You couldn't pay me to go back to Lubbock at this point in my life. So
I haven't been there in a while.
Last time I was there, I think I was driving a Honda Civic, and I encountered a tumbleweed the size of my Honda Civic driving into Lubbock. So if you haven't seen one of those, if you're from this part of Texas, they do indeed exist, and they can ruin your car. So
I don't believe I've ever seen a tumbleweed. The closest I've been to Lubbock in a long time is we were having a meeting upstairs the other day, or if I say the other day, a few months ago. There was a an actual road runner that landed, and this is not a UTSA related tweet, I promise. No offense, Longhorn baseball fans, but it landed on our patio out there, and it was just sitting there. I go, "What is that?" And I
wouldn't even know what a road runner is. I mean, I've seen the cartoon version, obviously, but
and it flew off our balcony, and they fly, and it landed on, and it was literally running down George Bush Drive right by Kyle Field. So it was an actual road runner. All right, we're gonna go off topic already. We're gonna go off clock from time to time. I'm sure you'll work in Taylor Swift somehow. Lord knows what I'll work in. But
sure, Mike Nacho will make a cameo here and there. He's finally napping now, so he's settled.
Storms are getting to him. I left Griffin at home, so I'm like, we got to race home after dinner. I've got a golden retriever that gets very upset when it thunders and lightnings. He's not the toughest guy around.
Get him a thunder suit.
It's true. It's true. All right, so where do you want to kick it off?
Okay, let's just kick it off. We have a show layout, so maybe let's go by that.
Okay, here we go.
Let's do our 2024-2025 hindsight, because we were talking about the whole Lone Star Showdown. We're actually tracking it now, and the Aggies, for some reason, signed up for a yearly trophy.
We like
so
trophies.
The final results are in from 2024-2025, and Texas wins 11-5 year one. 11-5. So some reflection on that. And also, we are filming this ahead, so we got some other news today that Texas also brought home the first SEC Directors Cup Champion Award. So pretty awesome news there. So just what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I'd like to dive into this 11-5, but I'll start with the Directors Cup, because there's a lot of talk on Twitter when that came out, and I noticed a lot of Aggies saying it's a Twitter award that people celebrate on Twitter, and they don't really celebrate.
Trophy, I'm pretty sure.
There's an actual trophy.
Stanford has won it a lot. I think they're the ones we compete with a lot on it.
Well, and that makes sense, because a lot of those sports are Stanford kind of sports, like rowing and things that people don't really.
Fun fact, I almost joined the rowing team at Texas simply because I wanted Texas gear. I did play soccer in college, but not at Texas. And I wanted the Texas athletics gear, but they told me the practices were at 5 a.m. on Town Lake. And I said, that is not going to be for me.
What part got you, 5 a.m. or Town Lake? I'd be afraid of falling in off the boat.
I mean, I've paddleboarded on Town Lake and not fallen in, so I think I'd be okay. If I'm joining the rowing team, I don't think I'm flipping the boat, getting in the boat. I think I'm a little more athletic than that. You need to give me the benefit of the doubt there.
I just mean the Town Lake water is all I'm talking about. But
it was the 5 a.m. aspect of it that made me turn it down. But
well,
yeah.
and you could have won a ring competing against the other three teams.
It's a hard sport. People like to, I mean, have you ever gotten on a rower at the gym and gone for 10 minutes? Because it works your legs.
It'll kick your ass, for sure.
It'll kick your ass. So anyways, people like to shit on rowing. So just had to send out my defense for
rowing. Yeah, you're like you said, you get on a rowing machine, and I know everybody does that now at the gym. There's like 100 of them, and I'll try to do those little, whatever you want to call them, hit circuits or whatever. And whenever there's rowing involved in that, and you think, oh, it's just 40 seconds of rowing.
My favorite form of cardio. Put me on a treadmill before I row.
For sure. So yeah, but anyway, you didn't do the rowing team, and you didn't win a ring because they did win a national title this year, correct? Or was it a SEC title? But I think a natty.
I think they got the natty this year too.
So look, this 11-5 thing is just, I don't think I joke about Twitter trophy. I don't think it's a Twitter trophy. I think I don't think it's something that again, like the SEC's been elite, the elite conference in almost every sport. Basketball, they're a little newer to the party.
And now they're even more elite. So you're welcome.
Listen, we're definitely, I would not deny that. Texas and OU coming in, although.
I'm sorry we brought OU with us, unfortunately.
You know what? I mean, I don't mind OU coming in because we needed a little bit of it to be a little lighter.
Just needed another toxic fan base. That's all you needed.
Yeah, that's all the SEC needed was another toxic fan base. But OU's having, we're going to get into that in a second with football, because OU having a much tougher time, I think, in the transition than Texas is. And look, the Longhorns have always
happened to a better team, honestly. I mean,
no, I mean, look, I said that is one thing that, I always joke. I don't joke. You know how we get into it. If you quote tweet me and it turns into this big giant day's worth of Twitter ratio, and you get the people saying, oh, always wrong. And I'm always going, y'all don't keep tabs of any times I'm right, ever. And not you specifically, but the fan base.
Pay attention to it just for you. I'll try to pay attention to it a little bit more. I mean, I'm very quick to save the bookmarks when I see them, but Well,
one of those things I was right about was Texas coming into the SEC more prepared, more built for the league in football than Oklahoma was. And that was a Steve Sarkisian versus Brent Venables thing. I said that repeatedly and believed it. And it certainly played out. And we're about to go into football. But, man, Amanda, it is. Texas, along with A&M and along with a lot of programs in the SEC, are elite athletic departments kind of across the board. The Aggies showed that this spring with, you're talking about things like women's tennis where they played for the Natty, men's track where they won it, deep runs in some other sports. Softball had the...
People even hate on the A&M baseball team in the early situation, and that's something we could go on in more depth on. But I do think even with that situation, there were signs of that could have been a really good baseball team, and injuries really hampered it. Yeah. And I mean, I know you're of the opinion. I'm also of the opinion that they should have not gotten rid of Michael early, even if people were shouting it from the rafters on your message boards.
Yeah.
I just don't think. I mean, look, what would have happened if we got rid of Steve Sarkisian in year one after a 5-7 season? That's my take on that. Now, next year, if there's not some semblance of improvement, then there's a conversation to be had. But you saw some flashes of some really, really good baseball. And I mean, you go into Austin, you lose each game by 1 run. That's not an easy task. It could have easily been a much bigger deficit. So anyways.
Yeah, I think you're right. And look, A&M, I think 7 of the last 8 weeks, I said, of the season, 2 months of the season they played. It's just conservatively, so people, don't want to say I'm overhyping it here. Top 10 baseball, conservative. I mean, Texas was number 1. LSU was number 1. They won that series. Arkansas was number 2. They won that series on the road. Tennessee, number 1, they won that series on the road. Georgia, they went 1-2, where people I think Georgia lost 4 games at home all year. And then they were good in the SEC tournament with wins over State.
I don't know how they lost that series to the worst team
ever, the worst team ever.
That was the one everybody's going to talk about. That's a Kansas loss.
Yeah.
Despite the good you have seen, that is the one everybody will talk about, and that will be a do or die next year if something like that happens. I mean, that was Charlie Strong's die moment at Texas.
Which one was
when Strong lost to Kansas?
Did Strong and Herman? Oh no, it was Strong and Sark. Wow, yeah.
Strong lost to Kansas, gets fired, hire Herman. Sark lost to Kansas, I think, year 1.
Yeah.
And then you can actually directly compare the situations because Sark had that awful, awful loss in year 1.
Yeah.
Early has this awful, awful loss in year 1. If you give up on him that early, what happens?
Yeah, I'm glad they're sticking with it, and he's made some changes to the staff. And look, it's competitive as hell now, and that's where we're talking about this head-to-head now. We're keeping score, right? When A&M and Trev Alberts and Texas and Del Conte, when they signed up, maybe it was Ross Bjork when they decided to do it, but when they signed up for the Cotton Holdings Lone Star Showdown, you signed up to keep score. Not that we weren't going to do it anyway, but when you have a trophy and you promote it at every event, I think it holds both sides accountable. It holds coaches on both sides to a standard kind of within the fan base.
11-5 is a pretty decent deficit, so that'll be interesting to see when and if that can flip into the maroon direction.
It's going to flip.
Texas is pretty dominant in some of those non-rev sports.
So yeah, where I was going earlier is, look, Texas is typically elite across the board athletically. When A&M went to the SEC, I said repeatedly where they were at. They were going to be a top 3 athletic department in the SEC, and they were right away. It was A&M, Florida, maybe it was LSU at the time. There wasn't a lot of, I don't think, elite athletic departments across the board in all sports, and they've gotten a lot better in that regard. A&M's kind of held its own, contrary to what you read on even from the A&M fan base across the board athletically. A&M holds just its own, but what we're really judging in terms of fan pride, and that's where I think people are giving a hard time about the Directors' Cup. I would love to see A&M. I think any fan base would love to see their teams win Directors' Cups, because with that usually comes some form of a national title or two. It comes form of top 5, top 10 finishes. Everybody wants to be good at everything. But the big 3 is what I think pretty much every major college sports program takes pride in, right? It's Michigan, Ohio State in football. It's, Duke and North Carolina in basketball. It's you mentioned the Aggies and Longhorns in baseball. I mean, all of these things, that is what we kind of carry that pride in. And like you said, football this year went to Texas. Baseball this year went to Texas. Both of those had a lot of sidebar stories to them too that made it that much more, let's just say, high tension, highly emotional, as we saw on our own texts, on Twitter, on social media, and on the field of play. And then basketball was kind of the ultimate toss-up. That was actually the most competitive because it was win one, lose one, and then the second one went to double overtime?
Basketball was the one that surprised me the most too, because I was not high on our basketball team at all this year. It's just, Chris Beard, I have words for that man, but that just, there was what could have been if Chris Beard decided to be a decent human being. I probably shouldn't say that.
Well, and some people, look.
The SEC, but what could have been? Because he had everything here. This is his alma mater. This is where he wanted to be his entire career. And I think that's probably his biggest regret of his life, most likely, because got the new Moody Center. This would have been a powerhouse. Could have been a powerhouse of where players wanted to play. And then, but after obviously I have some connections via Texas Tech. I had a lot of conversations with those connections, and a lot of them said this was a long time coming, honestly, in their opinion. Not going to toss those connections out there, but it was just, did not surprise them in the slightest, and they were very happy that it was our name tied to it and not theirs, which I cannot blame them. So
Pretty interesting.
a lot of people say we shouldn't have fired him. I'm happy we did.
CDC with a lot of really good hires in Austin, as evidenced by that trophy. But I'm with you. There was a lot being said at that time, and I don't know how much he has rehabilitated, but I know obviously A&M made a run at him. Who knows? Maybe turns out for the better. I know Aggies are really excited about Bucky McMillan and what they've got there, and kind of the work he's done in the portal. Just kind of how he's come off with the early returns from the fan base is high degree of excitement. I think you could probably speak better to it than me. It seems like that's the same way with Sean Miller down in Austin right now, who's a really accomplished coach. And, so I think if you look at his resume versus, Beard gets it done, but Sean Miller is a guy that's been a highly successful coach everywhere he's been. So I think both fan bases right now are pretty fired up with their future in basketball. But I do think it's interesting, Amanda, that the one sport, not the one, but the most competitive sport of the big three, where it was 1-1 and then double overtime before Texas claimed it in Nashville. And then boom, within 2 weeks of that game, both coaches are gone and both athletic directors are looking for a new guy.
It's very interesting end to that series. But I think we've discussed this enough. Moving on to our next topic. One of my favorites, the Elko commentary. Back to what we have next on the radar, because we are in that weird time of no sports for either of our teams since window. But the Elko commentary, I know you had some things to say on this, so I'll let you take it off. Just tell us what happened. Remind the viewers of Mike Elko's
talking. It's talking season, and I love talking season.
We all know you love talking season.
It's always talking season.
I think you should probably love talking season a little less, and you might catch a little less heat on Twitter. But
you'd probably rename that yapping season.
Yapping season, yes, I like that. It is. It's just a bunch of yapping, and I don't know if this is a complete sidebar, but a lot of fans have asked you, when are you going to get Amanda? Like, I can't wait for you to pull up something on her. It's because I don't yap like Billy. Yeah, you're not going to find it. Unfortunately,
you're scared to put yourself out there. Is what it is.
I'm not scared. I'm smart.
That is true. I think it's a combo of both, though. Here's the thing.
Also, I used to work.
You're calculated.
I used to have to be very non-biased on social media, especially a lot of these tweets I'm pulling from you are back in that time period where I had to be non-biased, so I wasn't saying anything one way or the other. If Texas won a game, I'd say, woo, yay, Texas won. Otherwise, I wasn't talking crap on other teams, because if I'm talking crap on Texas Tech, A&M, somebody else, viewers of ABC7 Amarillo are not going to be too happy with me.
Yeah, so
is the reason, and I think that just a lot of that stuck with me over time. And also, I will say I do have some level of battered Longhorn syndrome from Charlie Strong, and that being my entire college career.
Well, we all the listeners on this side certainly understand battered blank syndrome. We have our own version that is referred to as BAS famously. I think Tex Aggs, somewhere along the way, somebody on there created that, and it's
being
stuck.
overly confident is difficult for me, which is, so many Aggies will probably be shocked to hear that. Wow, a Texas fan that's not overly confident and big-headed, but I would rather expect less and be happy with more than have high expectations and be disappointed. So thank you, Charlie Strong, for that.
I think we're married as a fan base to high expectations and being like, damn it, please let us down again. And we're at that point in the off season, as you know, where it is talking season. We've got SEC Media Days coming up at less than a month as we sit here and record this. I think we passed the month out point here this past week. So that's the ultimate week of talking. And I really feel like I've covered the Big 12, Amanda, just like you have. It ain't the same. let's put it that way, all the way to, and I talked to a lot of the people that cover Texas and Oklahoma, and contrary to what anyone in burnt orange and maroon and white want to hear, a lot of them are friends and colleagues. But I've told them, and I've told the fan bases forever while A&M was in the league, like all, smack talking aside, like once it was sure that you guys were coming in, I said, you're going to love this. And it's everything. And as soon as you go to SEC Media Days, and whether it was any of the Texas sites, the Oklahoma sites, or whoever, when you walk into SEC Media Days, whether it's Nashville, Birmingham, Atlanta, you realize, damn, okay, this is different. The two things, it's like the minor leagues and the show. Like, it's crazy when you get in, you go, okay, this is a different deal. I remember talking to the A&M players about this years ago in 2012 when they went in, just the spectacle of it all. So that's coming up. And then once that's done, Atwell, I think we go right into the real season. But we're in talking season, and you mentioned Elko's commentary. He's been letting it fly a little bit at these coaches' nights, which I'm good with. I don't like the day and age. Nowadays, there's always a reporter there to try to get a viral quote.
Get their soundbite.
Yeah, get a soundbite. It's like they're just laying there in ambush, right? Ready to ambush whatever coach that is. So
it's the engagement. It's the engagement farming.
So you could either be scared to say something or not. And I like the coaches that aren't. And I think Elko's comment that got a lot of run a couple weeks ago was that he said A&M went toe-to-toe with a team that went to the semifinals. Now, it's funny that had he said toe-to-toe with a team that went to the finals and went one step further, no one could have said anything about that, because there was a team that they opened with called Notre Dame.
Mm-hmm.
It was a tie game.
Toe-to-toe with a bit more.
Tie game with 2 minutes left here at Kyle Field.
I don't think it's a direct comment that he could have said that. The thing is, he said something completely contradictory directly after that game. Had he not made that comment post game from the November game, nobody would be talking about this as much. I mean, people would be, but not in the same context. They would be bringing up the past of like, oh, well, what about this that you said back in November where Texas rolled over you?
I think physically annihilated was the word.
Yeah, I don't remember the exact quote.
Which I liked at the time, too. He's honest.
And I mean, the physicality of part of it, I've pulled out these stats for you. The sheer size of Texas last year was a lot different than the size of A&M.
Yeah.
A lot of people said it. Texas made a lot of A&M players look pretty small. And that's a lot of what Sark has focused on. So
and you know what? And that's part of why when I'm looking at OU and Texas as they were coming in, you said, man, Texas is more built to do this in the trenches. And why do you think A&M, Johnny Manziel was a monster part of the whole thing? A&M, their first year in the SEC, they went 11-2, beat number 1 Bama. Had there been a playoff, they would have been hell in that playoff. I mean, the only team that looked like they could, would be favored against A&M might be that Alabama team that A&M had beat in Tuscaloosa, who won the national title that year. But the reason, Johnny was the reason, but a big part of this thing was they had 3 starting O-linemen that ended up being first rounders on that 2012 team, and a 4th and a 5th that ended up playing in the NFL. Actually, 4 starting O-linemen that ended up being first rounders. And then the 5th played several years in the league. And then on defense, they had a guy named DeMontre Moore at end. So they were equipped in the trenches to not only hold their own, but kick ass. And that's what Texas did this fall. And that's what happened at Kyle Field. And that's what Elko said after that game. And yeah, I think toe-to-toe, the wording is what made it a soundbite. I think what he meant.
Point-wise, you can say it was toe-to-toe, like just based on the points on the board. Yeah. It was a game. But I mean, a couple plays go differently for Texas one way. It's a blowout. A couple plays go differently for A&M. It's a more competitive game. But I think the biggest difference is the fact that the Texas defense was pretty prepped and prepared for this game. And as you saw on season, you don't want to go for it on 4th down and 1 on the goal line against Texas.
I don't bring that up. And the good thing is we're not showing a highlight of that right now. I don't think
we can in post-production.
you're gonna like talk behind my back to the post-production, be like, hey, as we're talking about that, I need that clip
also
on
roll
Luke.
that Arch touchdown again a few times if we want to.
God,
There was somebody on social media the other day saying Arch hasn't actually scored against Texas A&M. It's like, I mean, it's okay if you're sad, but you need to know the rules of football if you're going to talk about it on the internet.
We're going to have to keep going because we're going to talk about Arch and Marcel Reed here in a second in this kind of, we got a little closing segment, but in our next big segment. But we'll close this one out with, we're talking year one in the SEC, and it's funny, we're talking physicality. And I think for both these teams this year, what Texas has to replace up front to keep that run game as potent as it was, to make Arch's transition easier, what they've got to replace versus what they bring back in the front seven. You look at guys like Hill and Simmons, and then you look at A&M, and what didn't happen last year, you mentioned it, and you're absolutely right. It was the inability to get that yard. On the first drive of the game, they got stuffed on 4th down inside the 15-yard line. And on the final drive, essentially, on pretty much the final drive, they get stuffed famously there on the goal line. They were not physical enough up front. They didn't have that power run game to punch it in against a great defense like Texas. They opened the year with a great defense in Notre Dame. They closed it with a great defense at Texas. The Aggies return their top 7 offensive linemen. They're getting Le'Veon Moss back. And then Texas has to replace that whole O-line. So I think both teams, it's like, how physical can you get up front? Because I think Texas, not just this year, but the year before, rode that with a great O-line. How physical can you get up front? How much can you impose your will moving forward? Because you have a first-year starter in Arch with all the talent in the world, and you've got essentially a second-year starter in Marcel Reed that had some really high moments last year, but then there was levels of consistency that you go, okay, if they're going to take this next jump. I got to point
this out, though. Marcel Reed. So do you know his record in his last 5 games? 5 most recent games?
Well, yeah, because I know A&M's record.
Yeah.
1-4, that would be.
Yep. Okay. So that's just, I mean, and I have Arch Manning's and Marcel Reed's stats pulled up, and obviously you can't compare them 1-to-1 because Arch he started 3 games, one against the worst team in the SEC, so you only want to pull so much. And I mean, I did notice one person tweet one of Arch's really good touchdown passes from Mississippi State, and somebody said, "Why are you using this play of like the worst of the SEC?" But if you look at the play, I mean, it is the worst team in the SEC. There was completely busted coverage from the O-line. Arch manages to throw the ball while being hit, connects with the receiver deep, and gets a touchdown pass. So regardless of what team you're playing, that kind of evasion in those kinds of situations gives me hope, especially with a less experienced O-line. He's definitely more mobile than Quinn was. That's easily said, especially with Quinn's ankle issue, and just Quinn was not that fast. Arch can run a bit more. So that is my response there, as well as the O-line thing. A&M has a lot returning on the O-line, but the same players that are returning are the ones that were stuffed on the goal line against Texas. And Texas has been said to have the best, if not one of the best defenses returning in the country. So
true.
There's a give and a take there.
I mean, those are good points. I would say this. I would say, before I see the Marcel Arch comparison, first of all, that throw, my bigger thing is great throw, but why do you have 7 points against Mississippi State with 30 seconds left in the half? But I will say that was his second start. It's fine. Teams have. It was
the comfortability of getting comfortable, and I mean, I wasn't worried at that point. It was just a kind of easing into it, and
he put up big numbers in that game.
Yeah, it ended up okay for us. I wasn't too disappointed at the end of the game.
And you're right about that. That is the same group. I think they lost a lot when Le'Veon Moss went down when he
the
did.
benefit of the doubt that they will have more experience this year. So
More experience, and I think something to prove, Amanda. I think you hit it on a good point. Like the way that season ended, not just you mentioned the finish for Marcel. That's the finish for the team too. Like and you mentioned the goal line stand, and if you're a competitor and you're a college athlete, you're a competitor. That had to leave both those things, the finish and not, at home, not being able to score from the one. Like, this should be a really motivated group. It's a talented group. I think the O-line and the running game should be the strength of this A&M team. And look, they're going to get tested again, early and late. Notre Dame in South Bend in week 3, and then Notre Dame in South Bend in week 3, and Texas and Austin to end the season, and plenty in between. They got some, when you go 8-4, in the regular season, you've got some scores to settle. It's Notre Dame, it's Auburn. I think that game left a terrible taste in everyone's mouth.
Hasn't that been every year? A&M's been left with some scores to settle every year. Is the burn a little bit deeper this year just because of one of those scores is Texas? Because
Yeah.
think back to App State, there was a pretty big score to settle after that. And
unfortunately, they never got the chance. They didn't get the crack back at App State.
You don't have to settle the score against App State, but just having a successful season following that will settle your score itself. And I think it's just the mediocrity kind of fell back into place.
Yeah, the 8-4. You and I talked about this. 8-4 in year one. Nothing wrong with it.
I wouldn't be mad about it as an Aggie fan. There is a whole just running joke of Aggies being 8-4 and that being the ceiling. But like I said earlier in this podcast, Sark was 5-7 in year, which was pretty ugly. But if you think back to that, there's this saying where it's at first you lose big. We didn't really lose big. Then you lose tight. I feel like that season we lost a lot of tight games that should have been won. I think one of them burned in my brain was OSU. The next year you win tight, where scraping by some teams in the Big 12 that we should have been blowing out.
Yeah.
And then the next year you win Big 12 championship. Playing in the college football playoff. And then the next year there was even more growth on top of that. Obviously, season did not end like where we wanted it to. If there was a little bit different play calling in that game against Ohio State, we could be looking at a national championship team. But just the constant growth. Now, if A&M can see a similar growth, even if it's going to a 9-win game next, or 9-win season next, I don't think it's something to be disappointed about, but obviously fans expect the world, even if it's not feasible straight away. But you can look from Texas's situation. There is something in the slow build, the development, the building the depth that you want, building the team chemistry you want, just the energy you want in the locker room. There's something to be said for that.
I will say there is a big difference when you're building that and I don't know if I really want to say this. This could be our first moment on the show where you just knock it out of the park, but I'm going to say it. There's a big difference when you're building that in the Big 12, being able to recruit, saying, hey, we're an SEC team. And Texas having a 3-year run up, I think, and it's not. I guess it is.
OU could have done it too. OU could have done the same thing.
OU has failed in that department as we sit here today.
Poverty. And absolute poverty.
Yeah, and they're trying to figure out this NIL thing that I would say it's fair to say both Texas and A&M are kicking their ass in, and a lot of the league, most of the SEC is. If they may have already, the die may have already been cast for OU and Brent Venables. Because, and that was what I was going with for Elko this year. It's important because you really cannot, and Texas fans, here's what a lot of y'all's fans will do, and you and I go through this, and sometimes you'll have none of it, and sometimes you'll say, no, that's true. A lot of times I'll say something, and people go, that's actually right, but because he's saying it, I'm going to go at him. And I think you're the other way too. When Aggie's here, you say something. But it was set up nicely for both those programs to kind of a slow build. And Sark and his staff did that. They were not ready for the SEC his first year there. They were not ready his second year. They were a lot more ready his third year, as they proved in Tuscaloosa. And then by year 4, which they were in the league, they hit it in a perfect stride. OU could have done that same thing.
Sark has background in the SEC, so he knew what he needed to build going into it.
Exactly.
He knew what was going to be successful and what would not be successful going into this league.
And so with Elko, he knows too, having been an assistant here under Jimbo for 4 years. And so he understands, like, we can't take a step back here in College Station in year 2, even if the schedule gets a little tougher. Mm-hmm. Even if the schedule gets a little tougher, you can't take a step back. So this is a big year in that progression you talked about.
He is fortunate to not have OU's schedule. I'll say that much.
That is true.
OU does have, they probably drew the shortest stick of anyone in the SEC, and once again, could not have happened.
Amanda, they do have a real gripe. And our final thing in this segment was going to be the SEC grind. And by the way, for those that don't pay attention to such things, Mike Elko's year 1 at 8-4 regular season actually ranks 3rd of 16 SEC coaches in their year 1 at their current school.
Inaugural.
It's hard. It's tough to do. But you're right. The finish, you can't ignore that.
Schedule that A&M had.
Did you just say that?
Yeah, even
because these schedules.
I have saved some messages about the SEC grind between us where I think you just stopped responding.
Yeah. Okay. So that's what we have written down here is SEC grind, and I talked that up for years, and so has everyone that covers the league. So has every coach that's coached in the league. I've had coaches that coached in the Big 12 and went to the SEC, and you talk to them, or they come from one league to the other.
Here is my biggest point with this. I can actually just read these text messages. I need to take out a few curse words because we might not want that on this podcast.
I mean, we can, but we're not like Barstool. We're just gratuitous with it. We don't just insert them for no reason.
Here we go. Here's what I said to you. And saying to me that I never hear these narratives when other teams are doing well. Who is criticizing Ohio State's schedule for being soft? No one, because the obsession for making some kind of reason as to why we are not as good as our W's is insane. Blaming schedule strength away and home is little bitch behavior. You don't pick your hand in college sports. I won't say that, and deal with it. I can imagine the discourse on how easy our route was to a natty now if we get one in the next few years, because there always needs to be one, because y'all are embarrassingly obsessed. If we were the team we were in 2016, nobody would be saying we have an easy schedule. They would be saying, welcome to the SEC. It's so much harder here. And I think that is my biggest point. If we were the team we were in 2016 and we ended up 5-7 after our first year in the SEC, even with this easy schedule, people would be saying, welcome to the SEC.
I was ready to say it.
Even if you're at the bottom.
I was ready to say it.
Guess what? Texas was a good team. There were points where and you can even see it in the games that were lost. The loss at Georgia, or the loss at home to Georgia, was atrocious. We go on the road, played a much better game. It was a loss. We're not taking it as it was a loss, but it was a good loss. Every loss is a bad loss. But the game was much closer. That's just a fact than it was at home.
Let me say this. Thank God
we beat Clemson, but you know what? That doesn't matter.
Thank God there's a character limit on Twitter, so those texts cannot be, you'd be a lot more formidable without a limit.
Function.
You'd be a lot more formidable without a limit because you're like a damn lawyer. But
my dad did. I was going to go to law school a couple times, and my dad always told me I would because I'm great at arguing. It's my favorite.
Hey, you walk in the courtroom, people are just going to go, "Oh crap!" Look, here's the deal. Texas, I said this: in the playoff era, it really doesn't matter. So, like,
the thing is, at the end of the day, you're going to prove it or you're not going to prove it. You're going to play the teams you need to beat eventually, and either you're going to beat them or you're going to lose to them.
so Texas played from the point where I was on everyone's ass about the schedule. Texas played Georgia, or they played A&M at Kyle Field. They played Georgia in the SEC title game. They played Clemson to open the playoffs. They played Arizona State, and they played Ohio State. That is a brutally tough schedule. The first 11 games, by SEC standards, they got an incredibly easy draw. The other thing I said consistently, the Aggies got a very favorable draw last year as well. I think both teams get a tougher look at it this year. Both schedules, to me, look significantly tougher. So I don't think we have this conversation as much. I do think if you're an OU fan, you can still gripe about
they can
Texas
complain.
and OU.
I think the biggest thing is that irritates me about this commentary is that, oh, the SEC was gifting Texas this schedule because they want them to be successful. Are you that dense about how schedules are created in college sports? And I mean, the thing is, the coaches and players are not sitting at home bitching and moaning about the schedule they're handed. They're talking about how they're going to win the games.
Yeah.
So it's, as a college athlete, I don't ever remember sitting there complaining about having to play the best teams in our league back to back to back. It's just what you got. It's what you were handed. It's how sports go. Sometimes they're not friendly.
Yeah.
And if you're a good team, you're going to be successful. If you are meant to be the one at the end of the road, you are going to be successful, whether you have a hard schedule or whether you have an easy schedule.
And I think baseball, I don't believe there's some grand conspiracy, but it makes it hard to not believe it when you look at the Texas home versus away baseball schedule. But
you know what? Guess what? It's going to be the reverse next year. So what are you going to say then?
No, well,
what's the commentary going to be then? Oh, it's a big conspiracy. Now Texas plays all the hard teams at home. Please tell me how you are moving the goalpost for this one. There we go.
Okay. We're moving on to the next segment. It is true, though. But like I said, there is a postseason for a reason. And UTSA, and I think Texas had a really good baseball team this year. They won the SEC. I just don't think they were the best team in the SEC. I thought that was LSU or Arkansas. I think Texas split those two series. The season plays out, and it tells you how it goes. But you're right. We are moving goalposts. That's what this show is. But we're not going to do it anymore in this segment. So let's transition to our final big segment here, which is, where are these teams at now? We've kind of danced around this. We've talked about it a little bit. We're in the summer. We're sitting here in mid to late June. Things really going to ramp up here in about a month, and we'll dive into all the fall camp stuff and all the predictions and everything, Amanda. But this is, we said talking season. It's also ranking season. It is, where do these teams stand now? And there's been a lot of talk in the ranking.
I got to preface this with, I'm generally anti-ranking myself.
Yeah.
I don't do preseason ranks. I think preseason ranking is dumb because all you know is speculation. You don't know all that much going in, but if I'm forced, I'll release a ranking, and I'm not putting much argument behind it.
Let's start with this.
A lot of them are interchangeable is the problem, because there's so many unknowns going into this season.
I think there's a lot of unknowns. If you look, it's very interesting that you can look at the national title, preseason top 5, top 10 discussion, and you can look at the SEC discussion, and you can look at Texas, and you can look at A&M, and every one of those things I just mentioned, the first thing that's going to pop into my head is the quarterback position.
And I do have some interesting notes on the quarterback position. Of the top 10, and I think most of these were in the ESPN top 10 as well, or I'll just even do the top 5. So Texas has a new quarterback. Ohio State has a new quarterback. Georgia has a new quarterback. Alabama will have a new quarterback. Notre Dame will have a new quarterback. So that's one of the biggest unknowns heading into this. I will say I am most comfortable with Arch in this situation, because I feel like of those new quarterbacks, we've seen the most of him. We know a little bit more of what to expect with him. We've seen a little bit of Gunnar Stockton, but otherwise it's a lot of unknowns.
It's funny you say that, Amanda. Gunnar Stockton, Julian Sayin, a couple of quarterbacks that are going to be of tremendous interest for the Texas Longhorns and the Longhorn fan base there at Ohio State and Georgia, 2 really tough road games. And for A&M, along the lines of those top 5, potentially top 5 ranked teams on the road, top 5 or top 10, Aggies go up to Notre Dame, where it's probably going to be C.J. Carr replacing Riley Leonard, who led the Fighting Irish to the national title game last year. So, again, a lot of similarities. Where we're not going to see similarities, Atwell, is in the rankings. I think you're going to see A&M, correct me if you disagree here, I think we're going to see A&M fall somewhere in the probably 14 to 20 range, if I'm guessing the preseason ranking.
I have them higher than that.
Do you?
So, yeah.
That's interesting because I don't.
Primarily just because of the O-line and returning quarterback situation. I like to give them the benefit of the doubt there because that's more than what a lot of other programs return. You kind of know what you're getting there, though. Marcel Reed does have some proving to do in that category with the way the last season finished.
So are you going like that 10 to 14 range?
I'm in that 10 range.
Okay, yeah. So I'm more in the like 12 to 16 range to me to see kind of.
Which I mean, what does it even matter?
It doesn't. It doesn't. I mean, you go beat Notre Dame and Auburn in September, and you're knocking on the door of the top 10. Yeah, and same with Texas. Like wherever they're ranked, if they beat Ohio State and Georgia, it'd be shocking if the rest of that season didn't play out where they're in the playoffs. If they don't,
my top 3, I even put this note. My top 3 are interchangeable.
Okay, so
I have Texas as my number 1, but I am leaning on the fact that my top 3 are interchangeable at this point because I feel like Texas, Ohio State, and Georgia are all in very similar situations as far as losing a lot, replacing a lot, and all having new quarterbacks.
Why don't you tell us your last 2, and then we'll look at my top 5.
So my last 2 are Clemson and Penn State as far as just not SEC. Just
okay, so our top 5 is really similar. So you went what? You went Texas, Ohio State, Georgia, Clemson and Penn State? Okay, so you had Georgia up there. I have considered moving them up. And
I just like Kirby Smart. I just like Kirby Smart to know what he needs to do to keep his team a college football playoff team. Obviously, the unknowns could change that. I don't know how high I am on a Gunnar Stockton-led offense.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I hope they're not as good as they once were because that is one game that I'm sure every Longhorn would really like to get back this year. But, I mean, I can't argue with myself to bring them down much lower.
See, there was part of me that wanted them. I actually had them at 7 behind.
I see in the top 10, I see it's fair. I feel like you can argue for them being lower. But right now, everybody else is a little bit too unknown for me to bring much higher.
I'm probably not, like you just said, I'm probably not giving Kirby enough credit and benefit of the doubt.
As much credit as I don't want to give to Kirby, I need to give him some credit.
So and I've got Bama.
Figured out how to beat us twice last year.
Man, I've got Bama at 6. They'll be an interesting one.
6 too.
Okay, so we're pretty damn similar in what we have. I do, and I know what you're gonna do. I know what you're gonna say. So just do me a favor on this one. When I say it out loud, suppress the reaction.
Okay, this is what he's doing. He's taking out the maroon glasses and he's putting them on his face.
I'm about to put them on, but refrain from what if it's going to be an eye roll. What's it going to be? I don't know. I've got Texas at 4.
Okay.
With that said, I agree with you. They're pretty interchangeable.
If you dropped them out of the top 5, then I think you would be getting ran through on Twitter.
True.
So I think you're safe right now.
I have them at 4. I have them behind Notre Dame, Clemson, and I think I'm leaving Ohio State.
I wouldn't have them behind Clemson. That's my biggest red flag there.
Why did I have them behind? Is that what you said?
You just said you have them behind Clemson.
Yeah. I love, speaking of Texas kids in Austin, and, I love Cade Klubnik. and
The one who lost to Texas last year in Austin?
had a great second half.
That still lost to Texas in Austin?
Yeah. I don't think he had as much around him than,
Okay.
in that
Then
game.
what changes for him this year to make it to where he is more successful than he was last year?
I think it has to do with the defensive. They returned a couple of defensive linemen that could have gone to the NFL that are back. And just, I think Clemson, they're just that they play LSU to open. So that could be a decisive factor for them. Maybe I have them there. They're going to be less challenged in the ACC than say Texas. And maybe that shouldn't factor in.
Here you are backtracking to that argument of bad schedule, easy schedule. So they have an easy schedule, so we're going to rank them higher because they might have more wins. But then Texas also has an easy schedule, but it's an SEC schedule. It's a lot of contradicting here.
Okay, so it's like you said, they're all pretty even, right? I like the quarterback. And I know Texas beat him in that playoff game. I like the quarterback. In a year where there's not a lot of quarterbacks, when you have Klubnik and Aller at Penn State, I think those teams can tend to avoid those setbacks that maybe the inconsistencies of some young and experienced quarterbacks have. That's kind of the thing I look for. And I'm saying that, and Ohio State's got Julian Sand. So Arch Manning versus Julian Sand in week 1 is going to be a massive matchup in the season of college football. Now, it's not the end of the world for either team because of the playoff, but I mean, how much swings there? And so, yeah, I have Ohio State number 1. They bring back not so much, they bring back a lot of playmakers off of that national championship team, particularly at wide receiver. Caleb Downs is one of the best players. I think they might have the 2 best players in college football in Jeremiah Smith and Caleb Downs. But Ohio State, I think they're absolutely loaded. They're a team that's going to reload quickly. They lost a lot, I think, up front. And I'm not sure returning starters on defense there. But they'll go, I think, as far as Julian Sand will take them. Same thing with Notre Dame, with Texas.
Ohio State lost 8 starters on defense.
So they got to reload defense. No question.
Pretty drastically. Georgia lost 7 defensive players to the draft, 6 offensive players, and their starting quarterback transferred.
Yeah, I'm saying Georgia. That's why, to me, Georgia is the harder one. Ohio State, I think they can make up for it with that skill position talent. That's why I've got them.
First and second, Ohio State lost their first and second string running backs.
Great running backs, as you saw in Dallas at the Cotton Bowl right before halftime.
Change the subject. Let's move on to the next.
Yeah, let's go. But anyway,
we also are running tight on time.
Amanda, you're right too. By the way, it is interchangeable at the top, and I guess the other thing we'll do real quick here is, and we'll just say it and move on. Your top 5 in the SEC to start the season, because we've kind of tackled most of these teams. So unless there's some wild surprise in there for us to talk about.
Okay, my top 5 is Texas, Georgia, Alabama, LSU, and A&M.
I really don't. I don't really disagree with that. I was actually going to put Georgia at 1, which rewind.
But that contradicts your whole national ranking.
Let me say what I was going to say though. I was going to put Georgia at 1 because unlike I always struggle with the top 25. Are we ranking the 25 best teams in order? And I think that's what you should do, what you think, and not based on who they play. So, yeah, I did that with Clemson. But I like Klubnik. I think Klubnik is going to carry them.
Talking about the SEC. We got to.
SEC. I go Georgia for here's why. I think they beat Texas in Athens. I think Athens is just too tough a place to play. I think it's going to turn out where Kirby Smart has Sark's number. I think that's going to be an ongoing theme in what should be a really nice SEC rivalry. It's just a thought. I watched those 2 games last year. I think they've got
similar to that big rivalry at Kyle Field last year.
What about that one?
Road games are super hard, aren't they?
Texas was the better team, though, last year. Georgia was the better
It very
team.
well could be this year. We just talked about all the losses Georgia has on offense and defense.
No, I think you're not wrong. You're not wrong. Let's call it fine. We'll call it a gut feeling. Okay, you've got me reduced to that. I think Georgia wins that game, and I think their schedule is not super difficult either this year for them. And I think they win.
All right, so just to note, Billy has Georgia below Texas in the national rankings, but above Texas in the SEC rankings. So that's where we're starting off.
I think Georgia has a head-to-head, something going head-to-head with Texas, and I think that in the playoff, Georgia doesn't advance as far. That's it. I go Georgia, Texas. I might have them delete this whole segment, actually.
It's not allowed.
Georgia, Texas, Alabama, and I'm going to put A&M ahead of LSU there. We're almost the same. We got two flip-flops in the exact order, just flip-flop. I
have them kind of interchangeable too. So
and I'm not buying the LSU hype of all these transfer portal guys. I think if you look at college football last year, Texas
people are buying the Texas Tech transfer portal hype, so we'll see.
Yeah, and I'm not.
I don't trust the coaching yet, but we'll see.
I'm buying the Baylor hype in the Big 12. I'm buying Arizona State and Dillingham keeping it going with Levitt and
I would buy Arizona State hype before I would buy Baylor or Texas Tech hype.
And so here's my thing with saying all that. LSU went so heavy portal. I look at Texas last year, I look at Ohio State last year, I look at Notre Dame last year. They cherry-picked the portal. I know Quinshon Judkins and Caleb Downs and Will Howard were sensational at times for Ohio State last year, but most of the guys playing had been brought through Ryan Day's system, and they were highly recruited and developed. Texas did the same thing. Notre Dame under Marcus Freeman did the same thing. You plucked Riley Leonard in there, but that was generally a built team. And I think I am convinced that even in the day and age of the portal, that is the way to go. And I think Penn State might be a team that shows that this year to all of us. So I'm not buying so much transition in the portal in football. And certainly LSU, Amanda, you're probably not as familiar with their history in the last 13 years since A&M's been in the league, because I think Texas, you guys played them in that spectacular 2019 game. That was what was it?
Where they kept on getting cramps on the field?
Yeah, was it 3rd and 19? Was that what it was with Burrow?
And I really wanted a rematch the next year, but COVID.
Yeah, and LSU sucked that year too.
Getting cramps, complaining about the heat. I'm like, I went to school in Louisiana. I know y'all deal with the same thing down there, and it might even be worse in Baton Rouge because that is the armpit of America.
Hey, we've got the new Lane Kiffin the Lane Kiffin fake injury rule this year, so we'll see. They won't be able to get away with that stuff allegedly. But LSU, if A&M is 8-4, and that's kind of their rut that they've been in generally since kind of joining the SEC, and you can't argue. You look at the numbers, you can't really argue that. There's been only a couple of exceptions.
Joe Burrow exception.
If A&M's 8-4, LSU's 9-3, and I'm not taking anything away from the Joe Burrow year. That was the best college team I've ever seen in person, and I watched all the Bob Stoops OU teams. I watched all the Mac Brown Texas teams. I watched all the Nick Saban Alabama teams, and I don't think I've seen a better team than 19 LSU. But except
that team that went toe to toe in Austin, so
yeah. Except
it's just crazy how different that season ended up for those two teams.
I know, right? But except for that season, if the 13 years LSU's been in the SEC, would you care to guess how many times LSU's finished a year with less than 3 losses?
I cannot guess. I've not paid attention.
Zero. 12 of 13 years, they finished with 3 losses or more. If A&M's 8-4, LSU's 9-3. And I think like that might flip-flop this year. I think Brian Kelly won't get it done like people are expecting with this portal. And I think they're a team that's going to sit there at 9-3 or 8-4 and be looking outside the playoffs. If I've got a wild card in there that we're leaving out that we might not should be, I think, Amanda, I will go with South Carolina. And I really like Lenora Sellers. And Beamer ball is real. They play with passion. They're really good on special teams, and they're exceptionally difficult to beat at home. That could be a winning formula for the Gamecocks this year.
All right. So our final segment, which we are looking for a sponsor for. So if this will probably be my favorite segment of this show. So if you have a company and you want to get some money in on this, it's going to be a good one. So this is called Retweet or Delete. And if you follow us on Twitter, you know that I am self-proclaimed queen of the bookmarks, and especially of the Billy bookmarks. So I have some favorites.
The genesis of this show, really, if we're being really honest, it's kind of where it was born.
Yeah, I mean, this all started with just some, unexpected bookmarks that I did back in the day when I didn't even know who you were, that led to you blocking me, that you got so angry about these bookmarks.
I had it that day. I had it.
Yeah, so he blocked me on Twitter, and at the time I was working at Dave Campbell's Texas Football, so I printed out a screenshot of his profile that had blocked me, and I pinned it on my desk, and I took a picture of it, and I said, I have a new desk ornament.
I'm sure some of the Texas football folks appreciated that too.
After that, he unblocked me. I think that hit his pride a little hard.
Yeah, it did.
So this segment, I'm gonna say 2 to 3 tweets from the past.
Okay.
And you can either retweet, you can stand on it, say this is something that I would stand by today, or you're going to delete it.
Okay.
And I'll go ahead and give a fair warning. You're going to want to delete one every single episode.
You're going to do it like that?
Yeah. I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt and say one of these you might be able to stand on. One of them you're going to want to wipe that.
So basically what you're saying is I'm going to pick one each week that I make you admit was a bad take and that you wish you wouldn't have said it. And then we'll let you decide if the other one is or not. I got it.
Okay. So
seems fair.
We'll give you your softball first.
Okay.
Okay, so this is from November 14th of 2024. So this was
recent,
before the A&M game.
Okay.
And also, my secret to this is the best tweets are not the ones that are just fired off. They're the ones in the replies, because that's where Billy gets emotional.
Defensive.
It's a reply. There's no narrative. No one is punishing you yahoos for playing Michigan. They suck. It's not your fault, and you haven't played A&M or a potential SEC title game, so you're not being judged on that yet. So this is pre-A&M game, which we all saw that way, but it is your softball because it is also before the SEC title game, which we did lose, but it was more competitive than Georgia first round. So are we retweeting or are we deleting this?
I would probably, in hindsight, delete that one. I almost want to stand on it because it was, like I said earlier, it was true. Like I felt like Texas.
But Michigan also beat Ohio State.
Michigan got better. You're right. And so Michigan beat Ohio State. They beat Bama. You left that one out too. Yeah. Let's not forget their last two games.
OU also beat Bama. So
yeah.
Only so much benefit of the doubt we can give them.
Try to give Kalen DeBoer the benefit of the doubt. That when you just said that, it really makes me wonder. He lost to Sharon Moore, and Brent Venables. DeBoer, what's happening to you? But yeah, I want to stand on that. And then when you just pointed out that, I was thinking more that Texas beat A&M and then lost to Georgia. But I would delete that one. I think at the time what I was saying was, You haven't been tested, but you will. And Michigan, as the season played out, was more of a test.
I think that's the running theme of these tweets, actually, of you haven't been tested, but you will.
And look, here's the one thing I'll say. When I changed my tune last year, it was actually even a little before that A&M game, because when I saw Ole Miss Ole Miss loses to at Florida. They lost to LSU. They lost to Kentucky. Alabama lost to OU and lost to Vanderbilt. I mean, these teams that were Tennessee lost to Arkansas. These teams that were supposed to be
somebody else beat.
Say what?
teams that somebody else beat.
Yeah, that was my point. And so as we started going in the season, I'm going, hey, there's something to be said for not getting upset by these lesser teams because no one else seems to be
Especially
doing
on the
it, right?
road. On the road at Arkansas, you can't tell me that's a nice environment.
Not looking forward to that
Your
one this
friend
year.
Peyton got kicked out of her seat just for being there.
Did she really? I don't think she got kicked out for being there. I know Peyton.
No, she got kicked out of the suite because it was an Arkansas suite, and this old fart didn't want a Texas fan in it.
Oh, it's sweet. Yeah, that's true. I could see that. I was like, we're not going to act like
it's less of the young Arkansas fans. It's the old ones that remember the Southwest Conference. Yeah.
Yeah, I've only been to Fayetteville once. It is not an easy place to play. A&M's got to go up there this year. One thing we did not hit this week that we will next week, by the way, or in the next episode, is going to be one thing we talked about. The biggest strength and concern heading into next season, and we'll kind of look, Amanda, I think, at kind of trouble spot games for A&M in Texas and also potentially swing games for the Aggies and Longhorns. So
got a couple trap games in there for sure.
Yeah, so let's file that one away. A&M at Arkansas would certainly fit the bill just based on their history and how tough it is to play there. So delete. I'm deleting that one. Go ahead.
All right, we're moving on to the next.
Okay.
Actually, I have 3 today, so I'm going to save the best for last.
Okay.
The next one is in response to me and our friend Tiger Vibes over at LSU. Goobs, the lovely nickname.
That is, I mean, it's funny. I can embrace the effort put in by a couple of those people to use it. I'm like, golly, they're trying. Keep going.
Something tells me this is August 29th, 2024, so preseason. Something tells me the Longhorns will have a less forced and more natural nickname in this league in short order. Have you come up with one yet?
Delete. I don't even know what I was thinking. Like, I don't even know what I meant by that.
What was your nickname that you put in there?
I don't know, dude. Like you said, when it gets that far in the, and like, you tweet one thing and you've got it's like a GIF barrage of people with their GIFs and their memes and and I'm like,
things I forgot I even saved. Each of these, none of these has any retweets. So
wait, you mean like this one that you're about to read?
That one has no retweets, no likes. These are nice and fresh.
So each week when this show comes out, is that going to be like a little like side promotion where we're going to be like, here's the retweet, man?
This show will come out while I'm in Belize, so I'm going to go ahead and schedule these retweets to resurface after the show.
I'm fine with that. That's actually a good promotion of the damn show. I'm in it for
my international data plan for this if I have to.
Hey, I'm in it. You can get reimbursed. I'm in it for the sake of the show. I will. That's fine. That'll be good promotion. What's the third one that? I'm nervous now. Luke heard me say it. You were talking. I was like, oh, shit.
To, our friend Fran, as well as me. It is from August 23rd of last year. It's in response to me and our friend Fran. We'll just have to see who comes out on top in sports the Aggies and Longhorns both compete in. Looks like now that we're officially keeping score as of yesterday's Lone Star Showdown announcement. Lone Star Showdown announcement. We retweeting or deleting?
So you're going to go with a clean sweep this week and have me say I'm deleting all 3. It was one that I wrestled with. The other 2, the
last one you had a quick response.
Yeah, I know there's nothing to say. I was like, I don't know what we were going to. I don't even know what I was talking about. On this one though, yeah, we're gonna delete that one. That didn't go the way I'd hoped. What'd you say that? No, it was 11 to 5.
11 to 5 end result, Longhorns, Aggies.
I care less about the Lone Star or the All Sports Trophy, the Director's Cup, than I do.
Sponsored and everything. Cotton Holdings, something. They got a paid sponsor for it, so it's serious enough. It's not a Twitter award.
No, not that one. The Director's Cup, I care less about than this. Like, to me, this is what matters. Like, because I don't care. I don't what Texas. What Texas does in rowing and beach volleyball doesn't bother me. It's the head-to-head that
volleyball was not included in Director's Cup.
Oh, really? I thought it was.
I don't think so.
Well, but even if it was, like, that's why the Director's Cup doesn't affect me as much. It's the head-to-head that matters, and It's the Lone Star Showdown.
You actually compete in.
Yeah. And so from that standpoint, yeah, we started keeping score. And I said, we'll see. And we saw. And I think in fact, you know what? I take it back. I'm not deleting that.
I will retweet that one for you then. Okay, so we're going to make a new rule. If you say you want to retweet it, you actually have to retweet it.
I have to?
Yes. It's retweet or delete. It's either you would retweet it or you would
delete
it.
Can I quote tweet myself and be like running this back in 2025?
No commentary justifying it.
Oh, wow.
Would you retweet it?
Well, okay, this is interesting. I almost want
to go into too long of justification. I got a 15-minute drive to this Father's Day.
I got a 1-minute drive to dinner, and I'm hungry. But I want to almost agree to this, but it's going to come off with no context.
Okay, you can give a little bit of context, but you can't go validating it in some insane.
Okay, that's the deal. And okay, so this will be fun. Every week, I'll either have to retweet or you're going to quote or re-quote tweet or whatever. So
either I get to quote tweet it or you have to retweet it.
It sucks like I lose either way, but I did say the thing.
I mean, I won't quote tweet it. I'll just post a screenshot of the tweet.
Okay, that's perfect. You'll just let everyone else do the talking. Perfect. All right. Well, this was fun right up until the last 5 minutes, but we'll do it again in a couple weeks. You go enjoy Belize and
lots of pictures to come.
Yeah, lots of. I'll
say hi to a nurse shark and some manatees for you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm more. Hopefully, Grant can protect you from the manatees down there. I mean, I'm jealous of that trip. That sounds fun. I'm gonna have to plan some summer trips as well, but we will work them around this show. We'll meet together in 2 more weeks, and we'll. I think you and I have talked about it. We're working on a couple of cool guests for the next few weeks. So what we'll start doing is have, like a 10, 15-minute guest in there to talk all things Aggies, Longhorns, Aggies, and the SEC.
Sounds good to me.
All right, she's Amanda, and I'm Billy, and we are Moving Goalposts, or at least I am.